Hello and welcome to another episode of the Theo Keeps Talking podcast, where you may laugh or you may learn, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. My name is Theo, and the most important question of the day, how are you all doing? Last time we talked a little bit of F1 and my darkest times with the sport, but hey, things are looking up. Things are looking up. We got a little Lewis win last race in Barcelona. Okay. Now we're going to Austria this weekend. But hey, if you like F1, check that out when you get a chance. Today we are talking about all things basketball and what an eventful month June was. Oh my goodness. In my F1 episode, I made my predictions for the NBA Finals, and let's just say it did not turn out the way I thought it would. But more on that in a little bit. For the recommendation section today, I have been listening to a new artist. She goes by Sailor with 2 R's, and the music is fire, can't lie. Allie put me on because, that's what wifeys do. I was actually reading into her, and it turns out that her previous stage name was Sailor Goon, and I think we, if you know, and it's a good thing that she changed it. But hey, like the music, right? A Pokemon update. I mentioned that I've been doing competitive Pokemon and everything, but on the side, Allie and I have been on a mission. Something fun that Allie got me was this Pokemon card binder for Christmas, which ended up being like a Valentine's Day birthday present kind of thing. I had a pretty sizable Pokemon card collection growing up, but I know I didn't have any like real aspirations for completing the Pokedex because it's 1,025 Pokemon, which is kind of daunting, but she got me this binder and we started going through it. Once we started filling it out with what cards I had from my childhood, plus some cards my mom and her and I for our birthdays, we kind of got that itch. Not to mention we went to Japan and got some cards over there, and it's like, okay, maybe something can happen here. And then boom, here we are. Last week, as of recording this, we completed the National Pokedex, which was really cool. We have every single Pokemon card for each of the 1,025 creatures, which is really cool. It's a lifelong dream I never knew I wanted to do, so really, really thankful for her and my mom. And now we're just going around the edges doing like the regional forms and the megas and the shinies and all that. So that's been a ton of fun. So a lot to cover from a basketball standpoint, and as I've mentioned before, basketball is the most discussed topic on this podcast, and ultimately I was going to talk about it last week, but I thought, maybe I would need to wait if something crazy happens after the NBA draft, and crazy indeed. So first of all, I gotta say, I hate that the draft is 2 days now. I think that's just so silly, but hey, Thursday comes, I wake up into some sad news. LaMelo Ball has been traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves along with Josh Green for Naz Reid, 1 unprotected first-round pick, some pick swaps, and some second-round picks. Man, I've talked about my affinity for LaMelo before, but I've been watching the kid for forever through Ball in the Family. I had a Big Baller Brand t-shirt. I watched him over in Lithuania. Then he came back to Spire Academy. He ended up playing one of his games at Towson. Went to the game. There was a fight. It was a whole thing. I've just been a fan of him for so long that my go-to League Pass team for the last 6 years has been Charlotte ever since he's been drafted. And it's so funny because if you asked me 2 years ago, hey Theo, what are your 2 go-to League Pass teams? It was Jalen Green on the Rockets and LaMelo Ball on the Hornets. And now here we are a few days removed from the draft, and it's not the case anymore, which is so crazy. I haven't run too many numbers or anything, but it is, an interesting decision analytically. I think Charlotte had been thinking about trading him for a while. They were talking about it during last season before Charlotte really started turning up, which we'll get to. But, there were rumblings about them wanting to trade him. He was saying, it's business. I'll do, what I can for the team. And I'll just be happy anywhere I go. If I stay, if I go, whatever it is. Then January comes and Charlotte just turns into the greatest offense since the 2007 Phoenix Suns. Like, they were on fire, and he was the engine behind the whole thing. It's no coincidence that the best years Charlotte has had are the years in which LaMelo is healthy. And just to kind of give like a brief dive into how much I know about Charlotte, which I've mentioned before, at the 2023 Las Vegas Summer League, I was giving a presentation at Sports Business Classroom on the Hornets. So I'd already been watching them night in, night out for my own enjoyment purposes. And there I was able to share my knowledge about them professionally. The main thing we kept talking about was we need to provide some star talent around LaMelo so that you can get him to play a majority of the season because, he had been having some injury concerns. And then getting him to the end of the season, lightening his load offensively can potentially impact your playoff / play-in seeding, and most importantly, get butts in seats. And I mean, this is what happened over the 2025-2026 season. Charles Lee and Charlotte really got behind the run and gun offensive mindset of go fast, shoot threes, get the boards, and win the math equation game. I mean, they were so fun to watch, and I mean, we're going to get into the playoffs as a whole, but I think the fact that LaMelo's 3 healthy years, Charlotte ends up in play-in territory, I feel like it's hard to say that isn't a success relative to where they were before, but I think they had been in discussion to, move LaMelo for more than just the past 3 days, and I think it's a shame. One of the things that we highlighted during our presentation about Charlotte a few years ago, and just their history as a whole, is that they don't attract star talent. They've always had to trade for it. I can't even name the most notable free agent signing because if you look at the most exciting players in franchise history, they've all been drafted by or traded for by Charlotte. And their draft decisions don't always go well. They traded the draft rights to Kobe. They traded the draft rights to Shea. And, sometimes you don't always nail it, especially in the LaMelo era. The drafting's been, You get hits like Brandon Miller and Con Knipple along with LaMelo, but you also get James Bouknight and Salon, and there's just no organizational success outside of when LaMelo is healthy. Charlotte in 2025 had a bad start, and from January 1st through their play-in tournament game, they were one of the best offenses in NBA history, and it's just a shame that we're in this position because that's the most exciting Hornets basketball had been since the Kemba days. It's a long time to do that to your fans who had just been in turmoil level, suffering for forever. And the question is now, what are you selling them on? I mean, Kobe White at the 1 certainly doesn't unlock the level of offense that LaMelo does. And you can't pretend you're going for more defense with Naz Reid and Hannes Steinbach out there. It's so much uncertainty for a franchise that seemed to be crawling out of the slums for once, It's almost like that Sacramento, they got a little time in the sun and they were right back where you belong the next year. And I can see the pessimism for the Hornets, like pre-trade, right? Like you're talking like an Eastern Conference where only 8 teams make it. And this year, the Pacers and Bucks missed out entirely due to injury. But if you're talking about next year, what teams are still going to be around? Like the Raptors are young, have an identity. They drafted well. They're leveling up around Cade in Detroit. They drafted well. Detroit, like the Knicks, Detroit, the Celtics, they're not going anywhere. The Heat just made the move for Giannis. So it's like, would Charlotte be able to just 3-point barrage their opponents to death to maybe get a 6 seed? But now that you don't have LaMelo, what are you going to do? Yes, they have control of their picks, but it's not like their pick swaps they got from Minnesota are even that good. Minnesota is not projected to be worse than Charlotte at any point in time. On top of that, it's not like the 2027 draft is lined with gold by any means. So just totally strange on something to give up something so promising so early. Part of my theory on why they wanted to move off of LaMelo, and this isn't like a fully fleshed out theory, and there's a pretty big boulder in the way of this theory, but I'm still cooking. Let me cook for a little bit. So obviously there's new ownership that came in. Well, not obviously, but there's new ownership that came in 2023. And I think one thing they were really trying to do is change the cultural fit and image around the team. So, I mean, ownership came in right around when it was decided that they were going to draft Brandon Miller. And obviously that's kind of like a sticky cultural thing. But if you're talking general landscape, obviously LaMelo isn't the greatest motor vehicle operator, and he does not have strong media training in terms of censoring himself. But I mean, you're drafting Con Knipple, who's obviously like a fine image guy. Then you draft like Tijan Salon and then Hannes and like, fine image guys. And it's like, okay, interesting. I think they want to shift this in a certain direction. And then that theory would hold more weight if they didn't continue to employ Miles Bridges. So it's like, culture, but it's not a guy you want on your team. He's the longest tenured Hornet, so I really don't know. He shouldn't even be in the league, if we're being honest. Like him, Kevin Porter Jr., they can go. I think the funny thing about how outlooks work from a organizational standpoint is the similarity between where Charlotte was just now and where Minnesota was in the past, right? Minnesota was basketball Siberia for the longest time, especially post KG. And I remember the whole meme about Pat Bev like throwing his shirt into the stands when they went their play-in game. Everyone's in tears, everyone's turning up. And it's like this franchise hasn't had much to kind of lean on for such a long time. And the crowd pop when Charlotte won their game against Miami, it really felt like this could be them. They're the young team slowly building up for something around their 2020 lottery pick, similar to Minnesota. But now here we are. From a Minnesota perspective, I'm very curious. They've always struggled to have offensive creators that are not Anthony Edwards. And Mike Conley, bless his heart, he tries his best, but he's a little bit older. Even DiVincenzo is more of an advantage exploiter more than like a primary or even secondary creator. So I'm curious for Ant being able to play primarily off ball, is what I would guess, for the first time since he's really hit this all NBA level that he's been playing at. On top of that, I think something that is evident about LaMelo is that I don't think he has the scoring volume or resiliency necessary to really carry an offense, because even someone like Hallie can sometimes ramp up the scoring volume without sacrificing too much efficiency. Even Steve Nash was like, hey, I'm just going to ramp up the scoring when necessary. I mean, you look back to the 2005 Suns-Mavs series, he just starts pouring it on late in the series. And obviously, we don't have an enormous sample size of LaMelo in high leverage situations, both due to injury and the fact that this is the first time they've had a consistently good team around him this year. But, I'm curious to see how it goes in Minnesota. I do think if you're going to be a pessimist about the fit, it does kind of give me vibes of the 2021 Utah Jazz, where they're the 1 seed in the regular season and then they're doing their thing offensively. Donovan Mitchell out there getting buckets, right? But in the playoffs, it's literally Rudy Gobert and a bunch of bad defenders. And I'm not sure how well that's going to go in Minnesota. Presumably they won't rush DiVincenzo back. I mean, he tore his Achilles late in the playoffs, which has had varying degrees of recovery, from KD and Hallie sitting out a full year, but someone like Tatum coming back, but also having issues late in the year. So you just wouldn't want to rush him. So you're asking a lot of Jaden McDaniels with this current roster. They haven't signed anyone else to my knowledge. I mean, they acquired Josh Green with LaMelo, but they have this issue. Something that happened with the 2023 Memphis team that has happened to Minnesota in the past, where if one of your better defenders is in foul trouble, what do you do? And Jaden McDaniels finds himself in the Jaren Jackson Jr. territory of committing too many bad fouls early. This happened when they were playing the Lakers. When 2023 Memphis was playing the Lakers. This happened for Jaden McDaniels when he was playing against San Antonio this year. And it's like, well, hey, you can only run so many defensive minutes with neither Jaden McDaniels nor Rudy Gobert on the floor. And one of the things about Anthony Edwards specifically is that when he's engaged, he's actually a very good on-ball defender. He really locks into his matchup, but the problem is the off-ball is bad, and the LaMelo off-ball is rough. And like, they're both taller players. Like, Ant has the vertical presence and LaMelo has the most famous height in history. But they're not really weak side rim protectors that can hold up in a playoff series. I know that Naz Reid or Julius Randle were not all defense level guys, especially not Naz Reid, but I am curious what they'll do to fill out the rest of the roster to bolster some of the backcourt defensive deficiencies they'll have, especially over the course of multiple 7-game series, because Minnesota is really trying to make that next step. I think it's evident that Minnesota wants to make that next step because they in the past few years have seen what their ceiling is. I'd say they tried enormous bodies in the past. Like, you're talking Nas plus Cat plus Gobert in 2024 that had its limitation against Luka's Dallas team, right? Then you go, okay, Cat out, Randall in, plus DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Naz Reid, Gobert, and we're just going to shoot the cover off this ball and hope our size and rotational principles will get us there, right? And I think the team had clear flaws, but definitely ran into some injuries at the end of this past season. And I do think Tim Connolly in Minnesota may be replicating a version of the 2026 Hornets in which, hey, we're just going to put up a bunch of threes. This was discussed multiple times in the OKC run when they played Indiana in 2025. And this was discussed in 2026 with the Spurs weaknesses, which is like, hey, you will not be able to beat these teams on the inside. You're going to have to beat them outside, get them shifting side to side, have threats on like each of the parts of the perimeter. And now Minnesota has two of the best volume pull-up three-point shooters in the league in LaMelo and Ant. And there's a tweet out there that Ant's catch and shoot 3-point numbers are off the charts. And now he has LaMelo, who's going to create the easiest looks he's ever had as a primary scorer from Minnesota. So, I mean, ultimately it's a new era, in both Minnesota and Charlotte. I do feel bad for Charlotte fans because that was the most exciting team they've had in a long time. That crowd, man, the play-in crowd against Miami was so cool. It was so good. I just thought it was going to last a little bit longer, especially because the team is so young. But hey, now Minnesota is getting the benefit of that youth. You're talking two players from the same draft class, like picks 1 and 3 in the 2020 NBA draft is the starting backcourt for Minnesota now. So, and Jaden McDaniels is still young. So, I mean, it should be exciting to see what direction they go in. Tim Connolly is not afraid to push some buttons and go for some zags when everyone is trying to zig. So, really curious about that. Briefly, let's talk about the draft. I said briefly, but who knows how long I'm going to talk about this. So one of the more interesting implications coming into the draft is that this will be the last draft with the current lottery odds. They changed the odds in an effort to curb tanking, which I really disagree with fundamentally. Some teams are bad because they're bad. Let's start there. I had the honor of going to a Pacers-Wizards game earlier this year, and those things were bad because they're bad. And fundamentally, the Pacers were not going to be competing for much without Hallie this year. The Wizards were still multiple steps away from being able to compete heading into the draft earlier this week. So it's like, why are you flattening the odds so play-in teams become the best spots, Some teams are just bad, straight up. So it's just so gross, and I hate it. Anyway, the draft was in its new format presented an interesting choice for the Wizards. So they had the first pick for the first time since the John Wall draft in 2010. And one of the things I was kind of certain about was that they were going to take AJ. Now, AJ isn't my favorite of the three prospects between him, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson, but he's the prospect you take. He's so easy to put a city behind that's been desperate for a true best player. And in that kind of sense, I mean, he's the rainbow face, The video of him going viral, literally all the teams that were losing consistently were posting that slam video edit of him rapping to On One Tonight by Gunna. Teams that were even doing well, like you're talking OKC when they had the Clippers pick, and when the Celtics were losing at one point, they were posting the AJ video. I mean, it was everywhere. So, I mean, everyone's in agreement. This is the guy. This is the guy. He's got the personality. He's got the skill set. He's got the fit, I may have mentioned this in the previous episode when I was at the Summer League. When we were doing our mock trades for the future, everyone said, no matter what, you do not trade a 2026 first round pick, especially not without heavy protection on it, because this is the draft. I mentioned previously that was the draft that Cooper Flagg was actually supposed to be in But then he reclassified. But even without that, you're talking a situation where AJ is the player who is promised for so many franchises that you just got to take him. I mentioned that he's not my favorite, but I had a funny conversation at the Chipotle by my house. I was wearing a Wizards shirt, and these kids asked me, hey, who do you think the Wizards should take right after the draft lottery? And I was like, yeah, Trae Young plus Trae Johnson. I mean, I don't see why you would take Darren Peterson in that sense. And then you have Alex Sarr and Anthony Davis, so I don't see why you would take Cam Boozer. I mean, Cam plays more like a 4, and AJ's more like a wing, kind of a tall 3 rather than a 4. So just take AJ, let him carry your franchise and all that comes with it. I would say I don't know what player I would directly comp him to because there's just so much there. He's one of the most fluid athletes at his height that I've ever seen. If you watch pre-2015 Kevin Durant, it's almost like that, or 03 Tracy McGrady before the back injuries, But those guys definitely had better passing and defense at times than AJ does, but AJ's relentless from any position on the floor, so I'm not sure what comp is really appropriate. It's just he's a bucket. But that kind of carries to my second point that Darren Peterson is probably the best guard prospect since Markelle Fultz, even though we'll get to the Dylan Harper of it all when we talk about the finals because he's my GOAT for real. But even considering the fact that Darren played something around half of the available minutes he could this year, he was having cramping issues all year long. And I'm not sure, what shot do I think Darren Peterson can't make? I think he can make any shot. If you ask me, Theo, who do you want to get you a bucket at the end of the game, AJ or Darren? I'm taking Darren. It's crazy. It's insane what shots he can hit. I feel as though I watched every Kansas game he played this year because I was like, I need to put actual eyes on this prospect. And I think it was Texas Tech he played. He had 2 enormous threes back to back in crunch time. I'm like, the audacity of him to take these shots, but nobody was surprised when they went in. Nobody was shocked. He's just a bucket like that. I think he's a better creator than the stats would suggest, and he's also a better defender than most would get him credit for, but he's definitely missing some of that burst and explosiveness from high school, but I do think that's due to injury. I mean, if he can look as good as he did this past year with 70% of his senior year burst, I don't even want to know what a full season of development will look like from him. I think it could get spooky. I think his best comp is currently Jamal Murray, but I think he has so much room to grow that his finishing and defense can really separate him as a top guard for years to come. Cameron Boozer, to me, has the safest floor out of all 3 of these guys, and I think he's genuinely a guaranteed 18, 10, and 5 as a baseline, no matter what. You're just going to get production out of him. I think something that does kind of dissuade people from his game is that he's not a super crazy vertical athlete, he's more ground bound, more bully ball and finesse, I'd say. The feel of his game is really high. The first time I heard about Boozer, he was a freshman in high school. And it was widely advertised. He's going to win everything. He's the most successful player in his class. He's going to win National Player of the Year, high school championships. He's going to win all of his accolades. And no matter who you put in front of him, he's going to win. And that's just true. Obviously, March Madness, a crazy ending to that UConn game. But I mean, he was playing so well. There was a stat that I think his age-adjusted production was showing him as the best prospect in this class. And I mean, one of the best comps I saw for him was Kevin Love. And youngins don't know about UCLA Kevin Love, but he was that guy. And I do feel like his game is kind of based around, cleaning up the glass, exposing size advantages, making tough shots, but especially at his size. But his passing vision is definitely the best of the 3 prospects. And I wouldn't say that AJ's motor on defense really allows him to be a rim protector because he was expending so much energy on the offensive end at BYU. Darren Peterson, I think he's going to be a good defender, but I don't know if he'll be Dwayne Wade level offensive defense. But Boozer's a really safe pick. He rotates on time. I wouldn't say he is a great rim protector at his size, but he's always in position, which I think is good. I think that's one of the hardest things to usually clean up for a player is just knowing where to be. And he's always in the right spot at the right time. And I mean, Boozer's just such a good pick. I mean, he's one of the best players you're ever going to be able to select with the 3rd overall pick. And Memphis just hit a home run with that. I am curious what Utah is going to do with Darren Peterson and Keontae George. Keontae was looking bad until this past season where he actually looked good. He genuinely could have gotten some most improved shouts, but he was not performing well in years 1 and 2. They do have the interior defense to bolster their guards, that's for sure. Walker Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen's not a defender, but he's just a big body out there, spaces the floor. So I do think Utah has something out there. They were like, hey, we got to turbocharge this rebuild, and they did it. They did it all in 1 year. I do think it's very funny, and people may not know this. So obviously in the new landscape in sports with NIL, and it's so well documented about this, but I just think this is so crazy. So AJ, who's from Massachusetts, right? He went to Utah Prep, and then he went to BYU. And mind you, the Church of Latter-day Saints had something to do with this, where it was reported he received around $7 million as an NIL package that kind of got him from Utah Prep to BYU. And that was the promise to him. And it almost seemed too perfect a situation where Utah was almost gonna get the first overall pick in the draft, where you would have seen the NIL pipeline truly come to fruition. It's almost as if you DIY'd the LeBron pathway. But I mean, hey, Utah still gets an outstanding prospect in Peterson, but I cannot imagine how the people and administrators at BYU and Utah Prep and the people who put together his NIL package were like, oh, it almost happened. It almost happened. It literally would have been the greatest success story of NIL in history, but alas. Lastly, I want to talk about Chicago because I'm not really going to get too much into the draft past the top 4 prospects. Caleb Wilson, man, the Bulls finally have a guy. They finally have a guy after spending forever in the 7 to 11 range of the NBA draft, and specifically also they were in the 7 to 11 range of the Eastern Conference for the last few years. And they finally got into the top 4 and they get Caleb Wilson. I'm not going to speak too deeply into the future, but I would naturally assume people were more excited for him than they were for Patrick Williams, who they drafted at 4th overall. It's hard to say you don't like that pick. He's not to be rude and reductive in any way, but as it looks right now, he would have been the best pick. He would have been the number 1 pick in 2024, and he would have been the number 1 pick in 2027 in next year's draft. He just provides so much pop. I mean, he was so electric at Carolina, and I'm really curious to see how they build around him. Right now, it's truly Anthony Simons, please have a functional jump shot. Because if not, no one else has one. But Caleb Wilson will immediately put butts in seats. He's so exciting, and I'm very excited for the franchise. You know, the fans have gone through so many things. A lot of my friends are Bulls fans, and I feel bad for them, generally speaking, but this is actually so exciting for them, and they really deserve it. So let's talk about the NBA Finals. Man. So next finals, let's talk about it. For game 5, I was in Philadelphia. One of my friends got engaged, and I was gonna watch the game at the bar, but we were staying at the Marriott downtown right next to Reading Terminal. And there's a big old bar right in the lobby, and the ratio of Knicks fans to Spurs fans was astronomical in Philadelphia. But hey, there was a funny story. It was the same first half as you come to expect. Spurs are up. I'm getting dim sum with my friends. And then by the time we get back to the hotel, and the Knicks brought it back. And I think it's important to try to contextualize this run, because I'm sure plenty of podcasts have already done their fair share. It's been about 2 weeks since the Knicks won, but I do want to do it my way, without leaning too much on the stats that the other podcasts and groups brought up, but this was crazy. First, a bit of history that doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. I do think it's funny that the last time the Spurs and Knicks played, it was 1 in 5 games, but this time the Knicks win. I do think it's funny that the last time the Knicks won, it was also during an era of extreme parity for the NBA. There was no definitive dynasty in the 70s. The Knicks won it twice. The Celtics won it twice. Nobody else won more than once. From 2019 to 2026, there's been a new champion every year. And the Celtics and Heat are the only teams to even make it to the finals more than once. Coming into the series, I truly disavowed the narrative of the Spurs being too young for the moment, because they took OKC to 7 and won there, which obviously takes an incredible amount of poise. Wemby pulled that pull-up 3 in game 1 against OKC, which takes some serious composure. And it did feel as though the Knicks were just going to be victims of the next great Spurs big man, like in 1999. Listen, if you believe in parallel universes, there are certainly ones where the Spurs do win. The Spurs led for 70% of the games, but lost in 5. Despite winning in 5, the Knicks tied the record for the smallest margin of victory for a 5-game series win at plus 12, equaling the Boston win over the Mavs in 2024. And even in that 2024 series, only games 2 and 3 were within 5 points under 5 minutes to go. Every other game were blowouts between Boston and Dallas. So this was truly the closest 5-game series we've ever seen. The Spurs held a 10-point lead in every single game in this series, and here is where we need to start assigning some credit and some blame. Credit to the Knicks. Longtime Knicks reporter and fan Fred Katz brought up a good point that all season the Knicks were a team that were strong late in the shot clock, which represents this resilience that no matter how frenetic things may be, you know your roles, you know your spots, and you know your strengths. So huge credit to the Knicks. Credit to the Knicks defense. Listen, down 2-1 to Atlanta, there was no semblance of this happening. The Knicks were constantly making those Knicks-esque errors where somebody's ball watching or misses a rotation, but they really cleaned those up. Credit to OG Anunoby. Through 4 games, I was going to hand him finals MVP myself, mind you. He is obviously going to get all the love for the tip-in, but he made multiple series-altering defensive plays in games 4 and 5 that might go under-discussed by the general populace. Credit to Jalen Brunson. Listen, resilient offense is his thing. It's no laughing matter that he just figures defensive players out over the course of a series. The first sign of it was Atlanta. Dyson Daniels was causing him issues in the first 3 games, and then it all came together. In games 1 and 2 of the finals, Brunson was 19 of 56 from the field. Games 3 through 5, he was 37 of 77, which is a huge in-series leap. Credit to Mike Brown. It never seemed like the moment was too big for him or his crew. Making the right substitutions at the right moments, delicate balance of play calling and letting your pros figure it out. So good. Now for the Spurs. Game 1. The Spurs have a 13-point lead with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. Knicks come back. Spurs find themselves down 4 with under a minute to go. Wemby dribbles it off his foot. Brunson ices it. Knicks lead 1-0. Game 2. The Spurs have a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Knicks come back. 50 seconds left. Wemby misses a midi. Then Brunson misses a midi. The Spurs find themselves tied at 104 at home with 13 seconds left with the ball and a timeout. Wemby throws it off of the back of Stephon Castle in an attempt to push what would become a 1-on-4 situation. Brunson steals it. Wemby fouls him. Brunson hits a free throw to take the lead. Spurs draw up a midi for Wemby to win the game. Misses. Knicks lead 2-0. Game 3. The Spurs have a 12-point lead with 11 minutes left in the second quarter. Knicks come back. Up 3, the ball is in De'Aaron Fox's hands. He hits a midi. On to Game 4. Knicks lead 2-1. Game 4. The Spurs have a 29-point lead with 10 minutes left in the third quarter. Knicks come back. With 20 seconds left, the Knicks have the ball. Brunson attempts a floater off the glass. Misses. De'Aaron Fox taps it to himself. All he has to do is run the clock out and take some free throws. He, instead, goes for a layup, blocked by OG Anunoby, then fouls Jose Alvarado inexplicably. Brunson gets a shot up for game, misses, but the hand of OG saves the day. Spurs drop one of the most gorgeous ATOs I've ever seen. The cat tips it. Knicks pull off the greatest single game comeback in NBA Finals history. Knicks lead 3-1. Game 5. The Spurs have a 15-point lead with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. Knicks come back. Jalen Brunson just Brunsons all over the Spurs. Mitchell Robinson with a huge offensive rebound. It's over. Knicks win 4-1. I think almost all of this series can be explained by Game 4. Game 4 was so insane that I thought about doing an emergency pod at 1 a.m. to try to contextualize what I had just seen. I was thinking, was De'Aaron Fox's layup worse than J.R. Smith in 2018? And the answer is yes. The Cavs were not expected to win that series at all. It would have been just a 2001 NBA Finals Game 1 moment for LeBron the way it is for AI. But the Spurs were slight favorites in this series. So this is a swing. This is a huge swing of momentum. I then thought, was it as big of a deal as John Starks going 2 for 18 in the 1994 Game 7 after getting blocked by Hakeem in Game 6? Was it as bad as Brett Favre throwing that across-the-body pick against New Orleans? Was it as bad as Peyton Manning throwing a pick 6 in the Super Bowl? All I know is, it's up there. The 3-1 comeback would only have been atrocious if the Warriors had not won in 2015 and then also didn't get 2017 and 18 Kevin Durant. The Spurs' future will dictate how bad this was, but in the moment, none of us have seen anything like this. The closest proxy in my head was the Falcons 28-3, but if you ask me, move it side, Atlanta. You can rest for now. How do I distribute the blame pie for San Antonio? In my draft emergency pod, I ranted for 30 minutes and effectively came up with this breakdown. 2% of this is on Keldon Johnson. That is the worst high-leverage 6th man of the year performance in several years. Tyler Hero in 2022 was bad, Jordan Clarkson in 2021 was bad, and Montrezl Harrell's defense in 2020 in the bubble was embarrassing. 8% of this is on the Spurs front office. You mean to tell me that the Spurs have one of the most dominant stretches imaginable starting in January, and you don't think you need to improve the roster past notable legends such as Bismack Biyombo, Kelly Olynyk, Mason Plumlee, Harrison Barnes? I mean, Luke Cornett was looking like food out there in the non-Wemby minutes, and if it wasn't for that chase down block against OKC, sheesh, his entire postseason would have been devoid of redeeming qualities. The bench outside of Dylan Harper was absolutely useless. 20% of this is on Wemby. Now, I know we're going to flame him for his lack of offense, but this feels really similar to the 2021 Bucks, where any offense over league average for them is a bonus. The Spurs had an all-time level defense when Wemby was on the floor, and that can't be disregarded. However, you can't be like, I trained with the Monks and or a gambling Mitch Robinson, all to miss clutch free throws and your game winner opportunities. He had no stamina left for the fourth quarter in each game, and that showed dramatically. Per NBA.com, his net rating in the second half of the finals was a negative 11.8, which is terrible. His true shooting was also only 51%, which is gross. 25% of this blame is for Mitch Johnson. Bro, your rotations were inexplicable. Let's get back to Game 4. If you're up 29 in the second half, why is Wemby playing over 20 minutes in that half alone? You're insane. Terrible usage of his challenges and timeouts. The lights were looking far too bright. You could see it in his eyes in the second half of Game 4. He didn't want to be there. 45% of this, and this may be too harsh, but I initially put this at 60%. 45% of this is on De'Aaron Fox. Brother, you are the highest paid player on the team. You're supposed to be the organizer, the stabilizer, calm the youngins down, and you're selling? The volume of missed mid-range shots he took was baffling. Why, down the stretch of Game 4 and Game 5, are you trying to get an ISO midi bucket one-on-one with no help against OG? What are you do? Are you dumb? Are you dumb? That layup in Game 4 is the worst play I've ever seen. 100 out of 100 times you pull that out. No question. And then he fouled Alvarado right after, making it a double serving of the worst play I've ever seen. Oh my God. Dylan Harper needs to take your job next year if the Spurs want to be serious. I just can't get it. I just can't get it. I can't get it. Some positives. That defense is serious. That defense is insane. Dylan Harper might be Shea reincarnated. He's got it all. He has it all. It's insane. The amount of defensive plays he was making against Portland, against Minnesota, the steal, like the off-ball awareness. He had so many steals against OKC. He was the only one who was like, I'm not afraid to get a bucket against the Knicks late game situations. And mind you, one of the most important layups that happened all series that didn't go in was at the end of Game 5. Dylan just grabs it and goes with like 30 seconds left, and OG defends beautifully in transition without fouling. A little inexplicable, but I like the initiative. You know what I mean? So many people were, is it a man? Are you a man? Are you a mouse? And they were looking like mice out there. It was looking bad, and he just was like, I'm gonna get after it. And I like the initiative. I like the initiative. I do think Steph Castle has some matchup limitations. He was able to bully the guards that OKC was throwing at him, but he really struggled against the size that the Knicks were able to throw at him. Between Hart, Bridges, and OG, he was not having a good time out there. So credit to the Knicks defense. I am a little afraid for the Spurs. I mean, obviously Wemby's an all-time, like he's already the greatest defender of all time. Like, I think we can say that. I don't think it's hyperbole to say such a thing, but I don't want to get too much into they'll be young, they'll be back, because we saw what happened with the 2012 Thunder, and the Kings recently were like a 2 or 3 seed. The 2023 Grizzlies were like a 2 or 3 seed. You know, it doesn't always happen. The Rockets this past year, or 2024, were like a 2 or 3 seed, and then they had a terrible most recent season, or whatever season it was, where they got blasted by the Warriors. You know, it's youth is a good thing to have. Minnesota has not been back to NBA Finals. The Western Conference Finals. The Mavericks made it to the finals, and they haven't made it back since. These guarantees are not ironclad, especially under the current CBA, especially as we're changing draft lottery odds. There's no guarantee that these players will be back here. Congratulations to the Knicks for being one of the select few teams to win the NBA Finals without playing a single elimination game all playoffs. I did not look up all the teams, but the ones I knew that did this were the 2017 Warriors, the 2001 Lakers, the 1983 Philadelphia 76ers, and the 1986 Boston Celtics, which we already highly regard as some of the greatest basketball teams of all time. So congratulations to the New York Knicks for having one of the greatest pro seasons we have ever seen in our lives. It was very impressive, and I did not see it coming, so tip my hat to them. All in all, what an incredible basketball season this was. It was so good. It was so good. All the right-wing grifters being like, meh, basketball readings, meh, I'm not going to watch. And then it's the greatest, it has been the greatest postseason we've ever seen. The Pistons Magic series was chaos. I mean, the Pistons, we thought it might be them, especially, before Embiid came back. It was like, maybe the Pistons got it, and they didn't have it. Orlando versus the Hornets in the second play-in game. I think we all kind of felt like Orlando was trending in the wrong direction and Charlotte was trending up, and then Orlando beat the brakes off of Charlotte. Then they were a size matchup issue against Detroit, really emphasized that Detroit needs a secondary initiator next to Cade, and they drafted Ibuka Okori out of Stanford, and I think he will 100% fit that bill. Shout out to Dan Shankins. He he's better off the bench. That's my opinion. So I mean, really excited for what the Pistons got. Jalen Duren, let's see how much they pay him, because he was not looking great. But I do think having a second creator can help with getting him the ball, because he's definitely dependent. He's almost like diet Amari Stoudemire in that kind of way. But I mean, hey, I really, really, really love basketball, and I'm so thankful for this season. It was so good. Let's tap in with the WNBA. Let's keep the momentum going. Excited for what the summer league has. This will be a very fun summer league to watch. I kind of want to go. But we'll see. I probably won't go. I'm not going, but I'm gonna watch. That's for sure. Shout out to Lewis Hamilton. Shout out to my GOAT, Lewis Hamilton. Congratulations on winning in Barcelona. Delusional has been imprinted on my forehead ever since he won, because I'm like, you know what? Mercedes has reliability issues. Ferrari, you can do it. But yeah, Austria this weekend. Shout out to WNBA. Like I said, I'll be tapping in the rest of the season. Go Mystics. They have a nickname for themselves. I'm not going to repeat it on this podcast, but thank you all for listening, for tuning in, tapping in with me. I hope you all have had a great Juneteenth. I hope you enjoy your 4th of July to whatever extent that you must. We're going to the beach. Yay. Going to the beach. Wife needs some ocean time, but appreciate you all for tapping in. I'll catch you guys next time.